Good morning, everyone. This is Beth Guyton. I'm with Talking Purple. And today I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about James Comey. I want to talk about John Cornyn. I want to talk about MTG. And I want to talk about journalism as a whole. And I think the thing is, all of these things tie into my last item, which is this journalism thing. So, yesterday, the news broke that James Comey, the charges were dropped against him and Letitia James. And I think that for the average American, when you hear somebody had charges against them dropped, you feel that they were dropped because they were found innocent. They were um, maybe another person was going to be accused. We've all watched enough TV shows that, they drop the charges because the person is innocent. And so when you hear that language, that's your automatic jumping uh, to or go to topic. The problem here is that we're using language that doesn't adequately represent truly what happened. So it's great that the charges were all dropped against these two people, but it's not because their cases were adjudicated and they were found to be innocent of what was going on. It is more this problem that I continue to see, and I'm going to continue. I think again as this show goes on, it's getting its legs that this is like going to be, hey, this is what you're being told. These are the facts. Make your own mind up, kind of a thing. And this is going to be a case of this because there's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo sitting on this, all of this. So we had a federal judge that was put over these charges for James Comey. And for weeks now, in my opinion, it seems to me that he has been trying to help the defense come up with ways to get the charges dropped. Okay. So they were talking about this lady that Trump appointed, that maybe she shouldn't have been appointed. I'll get to that in a second. They were talking about, well, the grand jury said three charges, but only two charges got to our court. And maybe the whole grand jury didn't know that we're going to drop the charges and the charges were going to be changed to one thing instead of another. So therefore, it was invalid. As it came out, the grand jury, all members of the impaneled grand jury knew that the charges were taken from three to two. Okay. So that was another version of this. There was constantly, the judge was injecting himself into the process to help support the defense. And the judges should always be agnostic. Their job is not to support the defense. It's also not to support the prosecution either. Don't misunderstand. The reason that the charges were dropped was actually one of these other reasons, and we're gonna talk through what this all is so that we all understand. But the charges were dropped on a technicality, and I think this is where um, people need to see through this, that there was three, if not four, ways that this could happen. And what I will say is that there was wrong on both sides per se. So let's kind of back up. So the statute of limitations on the crimes that James Comey may or may not have committed ran out on September 30th. In the middle of September, Trump took the Southern District of Virginia judge, or excuse me, attorney, and had them replaced with somebody that was more of his thought process. And once they did, within a few days of being seated, the charges against Comey came out right up against the point in time that the statute of limitations ran out. So the judge was first saying that this was, just a revenge prosecution, and apparently that's a defense to get off. Who knew? So if somebody makes charges against you and is going to put revenge against you, then we can let you off the hook. So that was the first thing. The other thing is that the U.S. attorney was wrongfully appointed. Another thing was that the grand jury didn't have the same things that came out of the grand jury wasn't actually being what was put in. You notice none of these said whether Comey was innocent or not. None of these are about the actual crimes. These are all, if you can't win on defense and defending your client, you start to get involved in the sausage and all these procedures to get somebody off on a technicality. So rather than defend yourself and you know, presume yourself or present yourself as innocent, rather you're going through all these procedural calisthenics to get charges thrown out. Now, I'm not an attorney. I don't play an attorney on TV or on the internet. Um, but what I will say is that if I was ever accused of a crime that I was innocent of, I wouldn't want to do all of these calisthenics to get it thrown out. I would get on the stand and say, I didn't do it. I wasn't involved in it. This is not what happened. This is where I was. This is what I did. This is how I did it. The same thing is because Letitia James got kicked out on the same, her charges got dropped too. Um, Again, I did a whole podcast on how many mortgages and whether somebody should be prosecuted for mortgage fraud. And the Real Housewife of New Jersey should be prosecuted. Maybe this lady should have been too. Uh, but we're all living in technicalityville here to get these people off. And what this has become is it's making the political system, or excuse me, the judiciary political as opposed to being an impartial, justice is blind. We're supposed to get up there and we're supposed to have a fair trial. Instead, we're playing games in the technicalities to try to embarrass the president because we don't like the president. We'll let anybody get away with anything around here because we don't like the president. And I think that's not where most normal Americans live. It may be where they live in New York and Washington, D.C., and the Washington, D.C. suburbs. But, and again, I grew up in New Jersey. But for the rest of the country, the rule of law is the rule of law, and you shouldn't be screwing around with, how this all interacts. So let's talk about why they got it on this technicality. So they tried to do it on the grand jury, and as it turns out, the grand jury people, they all knew about it. So there was no leg to stand on there. Apparently, the defense didn't want to put on a defense, so they're playing this game. But here's where the real problem came in from. The president, and this is where you love him and you hate him all at the same time. Let's talk about why this judge invalidated the U.S. attorney. And I think there's some valid points to this, but I think this is playing politics yet again. So this becomes that, would they have done this if it was a Biden person? Would they have done this if this was an Obama person? I don't have a crystal ball, but let's kind of like walk down this a little bit. So the U.S. attorney is appointed by the president, and the president has the option to appoint, and then it has to be confirmed by the Senate. And this makes the argument yet again to get rid of the filibuster because they're filibustering every person, creating these gaps. So they had a guy that was appointed to this U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Virginia, and that guy served a 120-day term. And the Justice Department or the Attorney General is only allowed one appointment with a 120-day term. And after that, it's actually the courts that pick the judge to sit there, and that judge can sit there forever. Personally, I don't agree with somebody being picked and then they can sit there until the Senate confirmation process goes through because we are filibustering people up one side and down the other. Now, what I will say and why it gives me a little bit of validity, if you will, to this, the Supreme Court did rule in on this years ago. And basically, according to what Sam Alito wrote at the time, is that the spirit of the law basically was that Congress was wanting only one 20 to 120-day appointment. And then after that, the district court needed to make the rest of the appointments if the Senate confirmation situation was not under control. Although I will not like it when it doesn't go my way in the future, I think that the Senate filibuster rule really needs to be looked at and looked at hard. It was not what the intention of the original framers of the Constitution was. This is, I mean, we've done podcasts on the filibuster before when we had the government shutdown. It's supposed to, the Senate is weird because it was supposed to be the representation of the states, and by having it directly elected, it is no different than the House of Representatives now, but it has the rules that the governing state houses should, it's responsible for the things that the governing state houses should have. So it really, the filibuster really needs to be done away with. They need to go with a simple majority. And that way, at least the states have some say so in all of this. The way it sits now, it's just a glorified House of Representatives with this special rule that stops, that it basically empowers a minority that was not elected. And if we look at it, the majority of the state houses at this point are red. And even the consensus, the count on bodies is starting to move. I think it's, what is it, 55 right now, whatever it is. It's over 50% of the Senate delegations and the senators themselves are red. So you are usurping the power of the vote the way you're doing this. Go to a simple majority and let's end this, because we have a loophole that we're using because we can't get Trump judges approved. The Republicans are nice people. They approve the judges on the other side. The Democrats don't seem to approve anybody. Just let's stop and go with the majority. If we're going to do this, let's just do it and bite the bullet and understand that there'll be times when we're not in charge of the Senate that we will have to succumb to this. But you can't cause this type of a problem, because basically we have a situation where people may have broke the law that are being let out on a technicality. And in James Comey's case, that trial that may never come to trial because of a statute of limitations. Now we can talk about whether this is retribution, whether they are being singled out. Usually retribution cases do need you to have some kind of similar person. I don't know where you have a similar person to the person that's the head of the FBI. It's like we have one of those people. So I don't know where you would come up with somebody else, because there's only one in the entire United States of America. As far as Letitia James goes, there is some looking at that could be done to find out how peers were handled. I didn't do any research in that. But part of the problem is the president himself, because he went out and said he appointed this lady, which then basically said, well, it wasn't a lawful appointment, and he put it on True Social or whatever. I guess it's True Social. He put it on. So that also gave legs to that this was not handled properly, and that this U.S. attorney was not properly. But again, do you fight the stuff on defend yourself? When you can't, you go after the prosecution, and then you go after the process. So when you can't defend yourself, you start looking at the prosecution and how to debunk this. And here's the judge aiding and abetting all this behavior, trying to give pointers. Well, why don't you say this? And why don't you say this? Look, it's not the judge's job to tell everybody how to do their job and how to get James Comey off. The problem is that we continue to politicize everything. And from my standpoint, what's gone out there now is, oh, look, James Comey the charges were dropped, and therefore a normal person, their inference was, oh, he must either be innocent or the charges were not accurate charges when the reality is we let him off on a technicality. So I have problems with that. And again, I'm hoping to get into the ether that James Comey's guilt or innocence has not been adjudicated. We are using lawfare, and now we're twisting the lawfare because we don't like Trump twisting the lawfare. Um, and it's entering the echo chamber, and it's only going to echo around the way it is. I don't know that everybody's going to get the facts, so that's why I wanted to talk about this. Okay, now the next subject is John Cornyn. I don't like John Cornyn. But full disclosure, when a tree fell on my house, I had to get John Cornyn to call Chase Bank to get me my money from my deductible because they do this thing where they pay the mortgage company, and then the mortgage company has the option not to give you your money. It took me to make a phone call to John Cornyn, but that's the extent of I like John Cornyn, was that he helped me in Hurricane Ike, which was in 2008. So we're almost 20 years past that. Oh, and he's still the senator. So there is John Cornyn is running, Ken Paxton is running, and he's our present attorney general here in Texas. And there's a congressman from here in Houston, and his name is Wesley Hunt, and he's running. And before I get into John Cornyn himself, what I will say, you know what? Let's do this the other way. Okay, so to my mind, and to the mind of most Republican primary voters, which are more conservative, Trumpy-like people, Cornyn has not supported the president. Cornyn has not supported sealing the border. Cornyn has not supported anything other than John McCain-esque milquetoast Bush Republican policies. And they're not the policies that most conservatives like to follow. And it's interesting because you have this group that is, you have a Republicans, but the Republicans really are two sectors. You've got the Bush Republicans and you have the Trump Republicans. And I think the Trump Republicans outweigh the Bush Republicans by a lot. Okay, but we have these holdovers because I just told you that that Cornyn was in office in 2007 or 2008 when a tree fell on my house, which implies that he was under the Bush. If you remember, President Bush was president all the way up through 2000 and 2007, 2006. All right, so these are all Bush Republicans. I'm going to throw Thune in on that too because he's another Bush guy. And these are all these collegial, big word, warm, milk toasty, wears a sweater, although I have a sweater on today. Mr. Rogers types that are, Biffy and Skip at the country club. And the reality is that's not what the country needs. That's not how the country wants to vote. And that doesn't represent, I think, the conservative movement, the MAGA movement. And again, I'm going to keep separating MAGA from Trump because I want America to be great. I want America to be the best it possibly can be. I think populism is the best path towards that. Conservative populism works much better than liberal populism. So we'll at some point we'll have a discussion of what the difference of those two are because they're two sides of the same populism coin. But John Cornyn this morning, the news came out that he's now in third place, and Thune and his Republican leadership's answer to this is to tell Wesley Hunt, a black man, to get out of the race. And probably they would like Ken Paxton to go away too. But Paxton has its own set of problems attached to it. And we can kind of, I have a lot of Republican friends, and one of my best friends is Republican. And she always tells me all the time, all the way along, is we like Ken Paxton, but he's just kind of got that ick factor to him. And I kind of agree with that there's just a lot of ick. So when I think if you're a woman, you kind of understand what I'm saying when I say that. If you're a man and you don't, you probably need to learn about it. Um, but Paxton's done a lot of good things, and he stood with the president. He stood up for the president. He really has helped the governor keep Texas out of the fray of what's going on with the with the country at large, and some of the things that we kind of have stayed immune from some of these things, because Paxton has been very aggressive in the use of the legal system to help support that. Okay, so Paxton's in, Hunt's in, Cornyn's now in third place. And Cornyn's blaming the fact that we got Hunt in the race. And let me just give Senator Cornyn a little bit of advice. Stop running an ad that says you supported President Trump at the border. We all know different, and it is not effective. In fact, it makes us all throw up a little bit. Okay? Because we know it's an outright lie. We watched it, we listened to it. If Paxton wants to say that, I would support Paxton saying it infinitum. Cornyn has been not an immigration guy. He has not been a border guy. He has not stood with the president. And we all know it. So to insult our intelligence and try to pick up somebody or just say something, it makes you look like a liar. It makes you look like, so the way the story I went to, well, he's in third place in the ads. He spent $40 million in ads and it doesn't seem to be working. Well, I know why it's not working, because anybody that's lived here knows it's a lie. So, come up with not that I'm giving him advice, because I really hope he goes off, and best thing he can do is retire and just let this be Paxton and Hunt, to be honest with you. Um, what I will say is, um, Wesley Hunt, I had the pleasure of meeting him a few weeks ago in person and engaging with him. I really like him. He's got an infectious personality. He's very bold. He's very outgoing. And then I found out he has the same birthday as me, which explains a lot, because it's just a Scorpio thing. So what I will say is that Wesley Hunt, I think it would represent us well. I think he has a broad appeal. I think he really has stood with the president. He and Dan Crenshaw are often uh, bought into events because of the president, because they're so supportive. He's ex-military. He's got a commanding presence, and he's somebody that would really, I think, represent us well. And when I first met him many, 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 many years ago, it's been almost 10 years now, since he first came on the scene, and he was nowhere as comfortable as he is now. And I mean, I recognize that in myself, even, I'm very comfortable in this medium and to do this, but it's because I've been doing it. He himself, now after being a congressperson now since 2019, 2020, I guess, I mean, he has blossomed. And I would really, if you're looking for somebody that may actually represent Texas, and do so in a good way, and support the president, if that's your agenda, then I would really strongly urge you to look at Wesley Hunt. I think, well, the other thing he doesn't have is the ick factor that Ken Paxton has. I mean, we have this weird Clinton-y kind of marriage that they're in this, I don't know. I don't even want to touch it all. It's kind of, just like I said, it's got an ick factor to it. But we like Ken Paxton. I mean, I don't know that I would want to go and hang out with Ken Paxton. I'd like to go hang out with Wesley Hunt. He's just got that kind of a presence. So, I will say again, you can lies, 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 Karl Rove, John Cornyn, nobody wants that brand of republicanism. And I don't know where to tell you to go, because they're too far wacky left on the left, the far left, you don't fit in there. I don't think you fit in the middle. But the country club Republicans, your days are in the rearview mirror. It's not the 1970s calling and we want our politician back. Okay. I think that we're all tired of being pushed around, and playing nice and I'd say sounding like Thurston Howell, but half of you wouldn't understand what I was talking about. Um, but this somebody, my friend called me last night and he was telling me, and he told me something I didn't know. In the 80s, what was red was blue and what was blue was red. And what he told me was, meaning that the Democrats were red and the Republicans were blue, and CBS changed that back in the late 80s, which that I did know. But he said to me the reason that the Republicans were blue was because of that blue blood, that blue blood moniker that they would put on them, the rich, aristocracy. Um, what's weird to me now is the hyper rich left has taken over that, and that's kind of where the middle class has been forgotten, and that's why they've kind of gravitated to the populism because the rich are running the Democrat Party with their attitudes and their thoughts. And I mean, and you can see it. I mean, you see the rich elite Hollywood. Well, I want everybody to pay more taxes. Nobody's stopping you from writing a check to the federal government. Write a check. If you want to pay more taxes, nobody is stopping you. I'm sure the IRS will take your money very happily. But you want me to pay more taxes, and then you hire people so you don't have to pay taxes. So, we're not stupid out here. We're the backbone of America. We're small business owners. We're people that know how to create jobs and make jobs. I don't think an actor on All in the Family knows how to make a job. Um, you know, so these are those things that I have to worry, like what their enterprise is, what their maybe Taylor Swift knows how to make a job. She's got like a lot of people, but for the most part, the Hollywood elites, they all live in their rich houses, have a lot of money, and they want to tell all of us poor people how they think we should all go over to their side, and pay more taxes and write a check. Nobody's stopping you. I don't want to write a check. I only write a check when I have to. All right. Because I work for every dollar I have, and every dollar taken from me is taking money off my kitchen table. All right. So that's the John Cornyn side of this all. So Cornyn bad, Hunt good. Everybody should support Wesley Hunt, in my opinion, if that's what you want to do. I want to come down also. I want to touch on Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, I like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I might be one of the few people in America that's willing to say that, but I like her. She's very personable. The problem is now Donald Trump pulled his support. She knows the writing's on the wall, but instead of creating your own brand and your own space in this world, you went and ran off the field. Who quits? I don't like quitters. All right? I don't think quitters are the worst. You get in there, you agreed to do this, you don't quit in the middle of your term. People elected you to do a job. They had confidence in the job you did. Don't run for reelection. That's fine. Help your successor. But don't go out of your way to go hurt the rest of us and go running with your tail tucked or your tail not tucked back to the private sector, because that's not right. I think that's really kind of bad behavior, if you ask me. And frankly, the way the president changes his mind, this guy's my friend, he's not my friend, I don't like him, I do like him. All you had to do was support him on the next thing, and you probably would have been okay. All right. But doing this now, it's the worst. So I don't like quitters. You're very personable, but I sure don't like quitters. And this is not the definition of the way I think that the people that you have joined yourself would. Um, Interact. And I will say again, I always say, Donald Trump is, whether you like him or not, it's just kind of like Obama. If you like him or not, there's things to learn from him, okay? He could have very easily quit in 2020. He could have gone back and played golf in 2021 and never looked back at all of this. I mean, the guy doesn't need the money, he doesn't need the prestige. I think he really is trying to do what he says, which is fix the country, because us out in the middle of the country know the country's broken, and that the ends of the country are what's causing the problem, and you've got to get them fixed. And it's not about, I keep saying this, I'm going to keep saying this so until somebody maybe picks this up and hears it. But at the end of the day, Gavin Newsom is complaining about ICE. Pete Buttigieg is complaining about ICE. I got wacky people walking into California buying ice scrapers and then returning them, thinking somehow that they're harming Home Depot over a 17-cent ice scraper. All right. Why would you do that? Go call your congressman and demand legislation to legalize these people. But you don't want to do that. You like the issue more. And to me, again, I'm going to keep saying legalize them without the right to vote. And that is the compromise. And you have them, they're in the system, they're here. I don't know how many of them want to be legalized. So there is that aspect of it as well. But at the end of the day, fix the problem and stop talking about it. Stop protesting about it. Stop. I don't like that Trump is deporting people and sending people to. Well, fix it. You can fix it with the vote in the House and the Senate tomorrow. Legal, no right to vote. Everybody would be on board with that. I think. I think the population would be on board with it. I think you could. It's a good compromise for all sides to be. I think the Democrats would say, oh, well, they have to have the right to vote. So I think that would, but then it becomes that they become the problem. And then we can shift the argument from the president's deporting people to the Democrats are not legalizing people. But we're not willing to do that. We just wanted to buy ice scrapers. I mean, we have to be the dumbest bunch of people ever. I mean, that's your way of protesting is buying an ice scraper. God, let me save you 17 cents. Maybe you can get some psychiatric help for that. Okay. Last but not least, I want to address journalism at large because I think this is just one of those things that we should talk about. And I think I'm going to keep talking about it. So, only 28% of Americans feel that they can trust the media. Now, I think that I'm wondering why that number is 28%. It should be a whole lot lower, but we'll go with the 28%. What that means is 72% realize that the media is a consortium of it's a cabal. I went to school for journalism. I went to school I have a degree in journalism. I worked for some prestigious organizations up in the Northeast after college. I interviewed Gerald Ford as 19-year-old. I had a pretty good journalist career going, and the thing is that I was taught that you should be objective and that you shouldn't use the pulpit to steer opinion. And what I will say is that I am trying to do that here, trying to keep it in the middle, just give you the facts, and you can go make up your own mind. But there's no place to go get unadulterated facts. I spent an hour this morning trying to understand what happened with James Comey because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutional Supreme Court justice. You would not believe how much trouble I had to just get to the basic fact of whether this U.S. attorney, what the problem is with her, and only to understand that her appointment was not handled right. But at the end of the day, that the real issue is when you can't beat them, you have to go after the process. So there was not a clear path. It's all it just kept saying is she was wrongly appointed, but it never said why. And I think I had to visit about 10 different websites till I finally found one back in September that actually outlined what was wrong with this lady and why her appointment was not right, and then used Sam Alito's ruling in what he put, which basically says the intent of Congress was only to have 120-day appointment. I think the other part of Congress was at the end of 120 days, somebody should have stopped arguing with the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate and been able to let the president do the job and the power that he's appointed, which is allow him to appoint the judiciary. So it got that part, but I'll accept that the Congress's original point was just to do this. But the fact of the matter is, I could not find an unbiased place to get the information as to why this Hannigan lady or Halligan or whatever you say, however you say her name, that she shouldn't have been appointed. I read this article this morning on this, which is why I kind of just touching on it as well. and it brought out a few points, but I'm going to cut to the end. The people in the comments were suggesting when they thought journalism broke down. And although I can go back and say, well, the journalists back in the 60s supported President Kennedy being named president, even though they knew that there was ginned up votes in Cook County, and that's a wide accepted thing now, that really Nixon won the 1960 election. He stood down because that was in the best interest of the country, and the news media did not really report the whole truth the way it should have been reported. I can point to that. And I can also point to the railroad job that was done on Watergate, because there's been several other political situations that have happened that have made Watergate look so banal it's not even funny. But when I look at all of it, I think the advent of the 24-hour news cycle is what really was the undoing of journalism as a profession. And the reason I say that is because you needed ad revenue to support the newscast. It wasn't just a 30-minute segment anymore that if it made money or lost money, I could write off the difference. It has become something that I have to be able to perpetuate for 24 hours. And what it does is it makes news entertainment. And once it became entertainment, which it is, I mean, you go to any hospital in America and everybody's got a news channel on. You go to any old people's home in America and they have a news. I think my mother watched the news every day for the last year and a half of her life and never changed the channel, because it's just becomes what they do. But it's entertainment, and people are picking their news based on whether they agree with their opinion or they don't agree with their opinion. So when people get mad at Fox because Fox is a certain way, it's because they need to retain their viewership. When they look at somebody like CNN or MSNBC, they need to retain their viewership because that's their segment. I do think there is a healthy appetite for somebody to come in and really go right up the middle and really kind of keep it sort of how like I'm trying to keep this program and keep it straight up the middle. This is the facts. The lady was wrongly appointed, but Comey's team chose not to defend them. They decided to attack the process. When Letitia James says nobody commits mortgage fraud, nobody does the things she does, I have the Real Housewife in New Jersey in the penitentiary for the same thing she did. So I'm giving you the facts. You guys can decide what you want to do with it, and make your own opinions and make your own decisions. But I really do feel like what we're lacking is that role of journalism that was to be informational and not judgmental. And even so, even this that I'm doing, it is a form of journalism. It's why I've kind of adapted to it as well as I have, because it's something that I'm used to doing and I have no real problem doing it. But on the other side of the coin, I am curating the stories. I'm curating the angles on them. I'm curating where I want to go with them. I haven't touched the Christian Menifee Amanda Edwards race. That's coming in future. Although what I will say is whatever Jasmine Crockett picks, I think you should pick the opposite. But then again, weeks ago, I said I thought Amanda Edwards was the better choice for the Sheila Jackson Lee seat. We can talk about that on a different day. But I'm trying to keep it in the middle so that we understand. I'm trying not to slant it to my own personal opinion every time I come up with something. But even as I curate them and curate the stories, I'm picking what I want to talk about, what I feel is important, what I feel is being misunderstood in the echo chamber of social media. So I am, but then again, I'm not trying to say I'm here as a journalist. I'm giving you my opinion. This is an opinion show. It's an opinion show of how to try to live in the middle. But I think the 24-hour news cycle, the second you made news entertainment is the second you killed the news industry. And that's at least what I think about it. One thing I am going to add, okay, is that I really feel like the news really did us a disservice with Biden and his mental acuity or lack thereof. And to repeat that there's no problem, that he was razor sharp, it is the just maybe we should have the Joseph Goebbels Award, which is who repeats the biggest lie for the longest, and we'll kind of pick somebody. My present Joseph Goebbels is Elizabeth Warren. She says the dumbest stuff every day. So I guess we can talk about Elizabeth Warren in the future. I'm not really prepared to do it today and start to give you some of these examples, but I think she deserves a Joseph Goebbels Award. So I think we should look at maybe kind of doing that as well long term. But anyway, it is Tuesday, November the 25th, 2 days before Thanksgiving 2025. So with that, I want to challenge you all to be grateful and be thankful for all the blessings that you have, because we have many. There are probably too many to mention. I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. I want to wish your families a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the holiday. I probably will not be back until after Thanksgiving with whatever, unless some crazy news story breaks again. But with that, have a great holiday, and I'll see you next week.